Deception Circuit EP12. Narcissistic Rage. What happens when you wound a narcissist? VO Scripts. 32 clips. Target. 65-70 words per clip. Josh voice was 130 WBPM. 13-14 seconds audio. You said something small, innocent even. Maybe you disagreed with them in public. Maybe you forgot to praise something they did. Maybe you simply outperformed them in a room full of people. And the reaction was completely disproportionate. What came back at you didn't feel like anger. It felt like something else. Cold, calculated, total. What you witnessed wasn't a mood. It was narcissistic rage. Narcissistic injury is the term psychologists use for the deep wound a narcissist experiences when their fragile self-image is challenged. Not threatened, challenged, even slightly. A dismissive look, honest feedback, being contradicted in public. For most people, these are minor frictions. For someone with a narcissistic structure, they register as existential attacks on the core self, and the response is designed to be devastating. Here's the critical distinction between narcissistic rage and regular anger. Normal anger is proportional to the offense, typically dissipates, and seeks resolution. Narcissistic rage is disproportionate, seeks destruction rather than resolution, and can persist for days, weeks, or years. The goal isn't to fix the problem. The goal is punishment, to ensure that challenging them carries a cost you will never want to pay again. The triggers for narcissistic injury are both specific and wide-ranging: being corrected, being ignored, being gently criticized, being outperformed, receiving less attention than expected, having a flaw exposed, being held accountable. In a relationship with a narcissist, you unconsciously begin minimizing exposure to these triggers, restructuring your behavior, your speech, your reactions, long before you consciously understand what you're doing. Walking on eggshells is the first symptom. Underneath the narcissistic presentation, the confidence, the entitlement, the arrogance, is a self that is profoundly fragile. Narcissists construct what psychologists call a grandiose false self, a fortified identity built to defend against a core experience of inadequacy and shame. When something pierces that defense, even slightly, the wound is catastrophic to them. The rage is the defense response. It's not strength, it's a shell cracking. This is why normal conflict resolution fails in these situations. When you try to de-escalate with reason, acknowledge their feelings, explain your intent, you're engaging with the logical brain. But narcissistic rage doesn't originate in the logical brain. It originates in a primitive survival response. You cannot reason someone out of a threat response. The part of them that could hear you isn't in the room right now. Narcissistic rage comes in two primary forms. The first is explosive, shouting, aggression, intimidation, cruelty, the kind you can name immediately. The second is more dangerous because it's invisible, passive rage, the extended silence, the withdrawal of warmth, the suddenly cold partner who denies anything is wrong, the punishment through absence. Passive narcissistic rage is designed to make you desperate and to deny you a target. The silent punishment deserves its own examination. When a narcissist withdraws without explanation, they are performing a very specific operation. They are signaling that you have committed an offense serious enough to cost you their presence, while giving you zero information about what that offense was. You're left scanning everything you said and did, trying to identify what broke them. That disorientation is the entire point of the silence. Psychologists use the term object constancy to describe the capacity to maintain a stable, positive view of someone even while angry at them. Most people can be furious with a loved one and still know, underneath, that they love them. Narcissists have severely impaired object constancy. When injured, they cannot hold "I'm angry" alongside "I value you." The anger erases the relationship. In that moment, you become purely the enemy. This connects directly to a mechanism called splitting, the inability to hold positive and negative aspects of a person simultaneously. When the narcissist is in a healthy state, you are idealized, all good. When narcissistic injury strikes, the switch flips completely. You become all bad, all threat, all enemy. The person who loved you yesterday genuinely cannot access that love right now. That is how their psychology is structured. There is a critical distinction between shame and guilt. Guilt says, "I did something bad." Shame says, "I am bad." Guilt motivates repair. Shame collapses the self. Narcissists operate primarily on shame, not guilt. When injured, they don't feel remorse for hurting you. They feel shame at having been exposed. The rage erupts outward to eliminate the source of that exposure, and you, in that moment, are the source. The grandiose self, the confident, superior, sometimes charismatic presentation, is not who a narcissist is. It's a defense structure, a fortified wall built to keep the fragile core self protected from awareness of its own inadequacy. When you wound a narcissist, you're not attacking a confident person, you're threatening the wall, and the wall responds with everything it has to restore the illusion of superiority. The most dangerous trigger of all is exposure. When a narcissist's pattern is named, when someone says out loud, "This is what you're doing," the injury is total. Not because they're being attacked, but because the false self is being seen through. The mask is slipping. This is why leaving a narcissist, especially one who knows you understand them, can be genuinely dangerous. You know too much. The escalation pattern follows a recognizable sequence. First, the trigger event. Second, the injury response, withdrawal or eruption. Third, retaliation begins. Fourth, a narrative is constructed. They become the victim of your offense. Fifth, the punishment escalates until they feel the power balance is restored. Sixth, the calm arrives, often suddenly. Seventh, the reset, which can look deceptively like genuine reconciliation. It is not. One of the most common forms of narcissistic rage retaliation is the smear campaign. Before you've processed what happened, they've already been building a narrative with mutual contacts, family members, colleagues. They were hurt by you. They are the victim. Your version of events, should you ever share it, lands on people already primed to distrust it. The campaign starts before you even know there's a war. Narcissistic rage frequently weaponizes practical systems, legal threats designed not to win, but to exhaust you. Disputes over shared finances or property timed to maximize your instability. Custody battles framed as concern, but executed as punishment. These aren't random. They're targeted. A narcissist in rage will use any lever that costs you stability, money, reputation, or peace. The goal isn't justice. The goal is making resistance hurt. When direct attack isn't sufficient, or when they want to maintain their public image, narcissists in a rage episode deploy flying monkeys. People in their network, often genuinely deceived, who carry the message, apply the pressure, and do the reputational work the narcissist can't do openly without revealing themselves. The flying monkey rarely knows they're being used. They believe entirely that they are helping. Here is one of the cruelest mechanics of narcissistic rage. Everything you shared with them, your fears, your traumas, your deepest insecurities was retained. And in a rage episode, those become precision weapons. The thing you disclosed in a moment of trust becomes the thing deployed to destabilize you most efficiently. Intimacy weaponized. This is why narcissistic rage cuts so deep. It was designed specifically for you. After the rage cycle peaks, there's frequently a sudden calm, and that calm is dangerous to misread. It can look like remorse, like the storm has passed, like the person you fell in love with is back. Sometimes it's followed by affection and reconnection. But this is a reset to baseline, not recovery. The next trigger will produce the same result. The calm is not a conclusion. If you are in a situation with a narcissist in an active rage episode, here is the most important behavioral principle. Do not challenge them directly. Do not say you're overreacting. Do not present evidence of their wrongdoing. Do not attempt to win the argument. Direct challenge intensifies the injury. The wound gets deeper, the rage escalates, and you become more dangerous to them, which makes you less safe. The gray rock method is one of the most effective tools for navigating narcissistic rage. The principle: make yourself as uninteresting as possible. Give flat, boring, non-reactive responses. No emotional content to feed from. No anger that validates their narrative. No tears that reward the punishment. The gray rock method works because narcissistic rage requires a reaction to sustain itself. Remove the reaction, and you remove the fuel entirely. Documentation is protection. If you are in a relationship or situation where narcissistic rage episodes occur regularly, keep a record. Dates, times, what was said, what happened, screenshots of messages, written accounts of conversations, not because you're planning immediate action, but because narcissists rewrite history with remarkable precision. Your documentation is a tether to what actually happened when they insist it didn't. Hold on to it. After a narcissistic rage episode, targets almost universally feel responsible. You triggered it. You should have known better. If you'd been more careful, less confrontational, it wouldn't have happened. This feeling is engineered. The goal of narcissistic rage isn't only punishment, it's recalibration, training you to avoid the next episode by never challenging them again. The responsibility you feel is the intended behavioral outcome, not a perception error. Under repeated narcissistic rage, targets develop recognizable trauma responses: fawning, over-accommodating to prevent triggering, freezing, going emotionally still to become invisible, fleeing, physically or emotionally removing themselves during episodes, hypervigilance, constantly monitoring mood for early warning signs. These are not character flaws or weakness. They are adaptive survival responses to an unpredictable environment. Your nervous system learned to survive. That is not something to be ashamed of. Narcissistic rage can escalate to physical danger, and that transition can happen faster than people expect. If rage is increasing in intensity over time, if personal space is being violated, if threats are being made, if you feel unsafe, take that seriously. Risk escalates most sharply at the point of separation, when they sense they are losing control. That is when professional safety planning becomes a non-negotiable priority. People ask why no contact is so frequently recommended after leaving a narcissist. Here is the specific answer. It removes the trigger mechanism. You cannot wound someone who cannot access you. It also removes the intelligence pipeline. They can no longer gather data on your vulnerabilities or your reactions, and it removes the fuel source. Narcissistic rage requires a target. When you go fully dark, you stop being one. the most important reframe in recovering from narcissistic rage. Their reaction was never a measure of your worth, not evidence that you were wrong, not proof that you deserved punishment. It was the output of a psychological system that was operational long before you arrived. You walked into a machine already running. You didn't break it. You didn't cause it. You simply got close enough to be caught in it. One lasting effect of extended exposure to narcissistic rage is the silencing of your voice. You stopped saying things, stopped expressing opinions, stopped naming needs. You learned your voice was a trigger. Recovery means relearning that your voice is a right, not a weapon, that you can speak, disagree, exist, without catastrophic consequences. This conditioning takes time to undo, but it does undo. Your voice is still yours. Here is something worth sitting with. Before the large rage episodes you can clearly identify, there were smaller ones. The cold shoulder that lasted a day, the pointed remark, the sudden disapproval, the comment that landed wrong in a way you couldn't explain. You probably didn't name those as rage, but they were the same system running at lower intensity, same mechanism, same function, just quieter, always running. To recalibrate after narcissistic rage, it helps to know what healthy anger actually looks like. Healthy anger is expressed directly and proportionally. It names the specific issue. It stays open to the other person's perspective. It aims for resolution, not dominance. It doesn't persist beyond the situation. It doesn't punish. It doesn't weaponize past disclosures. Healthy anger is contained and purposeful, and leaves both people standing after it ends. Here's the reframe to carry with you. If you've experienced narcissistic rage, you now know something most people don't. You know exactly what the absence of emotional regulation looks like at its most extreme, and that knowledge is protective. You'll recognize it faster next time. You'll trust your instincts sooner. The damage was real. But so is the clarity it gave you. That clarity is permanently yours now.